Rain slashed my face like glass shards, freezing and cruel, yet nothing compared to the ice in my husband's eyes as he kicked my suitcase down the soaked steps. I shivered, watching him pour vintage wine for his 22-year-old mistress in the home my inheritance paid for. Just as my legs gave out, a black SUV glided to the curb. The rear window lowered, revealing the one man who could turn my tears into a weapon. My name is Audrey Vance, and at 32 years old, my resume apparently included being a discarded wife left to drown in a Seattle storm. The rain did not just fall from the sky. It felt like the heavens were trying to scrub my existence off the pavement of the driveway I had paid for. I shivered violently in my thin silk blouse, my arms wrapping around my chest in a futile attempt to preserve the last fraction of body heat I possessed. The heavy oak door of the mansion stood shut before me, an impenetrable barrier to the life I had built for 10 years. Just minutes ago, Derek had stood there, his face twisted in that sneering arrogance that the business magazines mistook for visionary confidence. He had snatched my phone from my hand and smashed it against the brick pillar with a sickening crunch. "You are done. Audrey," Derek had spat, his voice fighting the roar of the wind. "Look at you. You are frantic. You are messy. You are too old, too controlling, and you simply do not fit the image of Novus Tech anymore. I need fresh energy. I need someone who inspires, not someone who nags me about spreadsheets." He did not need fresh energy. He needed Brianna. Through the rain-slicked window, I could see her. She was 22 years old, a self-proclaimed life coach with 1 million Instagram followers and a vocabulary consisting mostly of buzzwords. She was currently wearing my favorite cashmere shawl, sipping the vintage Pinot Noir I had saved for our anniversary, and laughing at something Derek was saying. She looked warm. She looked secure. She looked like she owned the place. "If you try to come back," Derek had shouted before slamming the door, "I will tell every media outlet in this city that you have suffered a psychotic break. I will have you committed. Audrey, do not test me." I stood frozen. The cold seeped into my marrow. My credit cards were likely already canceled. My phone was a pile of glass and metal shards at my feet. I had no car keys. I had nothing but the clothes on my back and the crushing realization that my decade of sacrifice, the sleepless nights coding his algorithms, the financial maneuvering to save his company from bankruptcy, the emotional labor of stroking his fragile ego had been erased in a single heartbeat. I was about to collapse onto the wet asphalt when twin beams of light cut through the darkness. A vehicle approached slowly, its tires hissing against the flooded road. It was not a police cruiser. It was not a taxi. It was a black Cadillac Escalade, sleek and imposing, looking like a predator gliding through deep water. The car stopped right beside me. The rear window hummed as it lowered, revealing a face I had seen on the cover of Forbes countless times. Marcus Sterling, the shark of Wall Street, Derek's most bitter rival. He did not look at me with pity. His gray eyes were sharp, calculating, assessing me like an asset that had been severely undervalued by the market. "Get in." "Ms. Vance," Marcus said, his voice smooth and authoritative, cutting through the noise of the storm. "Unless you plan to catch pneumonia to prove a point." I hesitated. This man had tried to hostilely take over Novus Tech 3 times. He was the enemy. "Why would you help me?" I asked, my voice cracking from the cold. "I have nothing." "He took everything. He took your credit cards and your house keys," Marcus corrected, opening the door from the inside. "But he did not take your brain." I know Derek can barely code a website in HTML. I know who actually built the predictive architecture for Novus. "Get in. Now." The mention of the code, my secret, my life's work, shattered my paralysis. I climbed into the back seat. The interior was enveloped in the scent of expensive leather and dry warmth. As the door closed, sealing out the howling wind, The silence was deafening. I looked at my trembling hands, realizing the woman who stood crying in the rain had to die right there on that driveway. If I wanted to survive, I had to become someone else. Marcus handed me a bottle of water. He did not offer a blanket or a tissue. He offered me reality. Derek is liquidating, Marcus stated flatly as the car pulled away, leaving my former home behind. He is finalizing a sale of Novus Tech to a conglomerate in Singapore for $300 million. He plans to sign the deal in 2 weeks. I stared at him, the shock momentarily overriding the cold. He can't. The board wouldn't approve it without a full audit. That is the interesting part. Marcus turned to me, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. The audit will show massive irregularities, missing funds, diverted assets. And once the divorce is filed, Derek intends to pin every single cent of that fraud on you. He paints you as the controlling, mentally unstable wife who cooked the books behind his back. My blood ran cold, colder than the rain outside. It was not just betrayal. It was an execution. I looked back at the fading lights of the mansion. The shivering stopped. The tears evaporated. He thinks I am the liability, I whispered, my voice steadying for the first time that night. Then let's show him, Marcus said, handing me a tablet. Exactly how dangerous a liability can be. The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse living room. It was sterile, modern, and warm. I did not take the time to admire the panoramic view of the city that had just chewed me up and spit me out. I walked straight to the console table, opened my laptop, the only piece of hardware Derek had not managed to smash because I kept it in my purse and connected to the encrypted cloud server. My fingers flew across the keys. It was a muscle memory born of a decade of silence. I remembered the first time I wrote the code that became the backbone of Novus Tech. I was 22, a doctoral candidate in mathematics with a scholarship to MIT. Derek was a charismatic business major with a failing startup and a smile that promised the world, "Babe, you know how the industry is." He had told me back then, holding my face in his hands. Investors. They want a Steve Jobs. They want a visionary leader. If they know the tech comes from his wife, they will undervalue us. Let me be the face. You be the heart. I had agreed. I stepped into the shadows. I let him take the interviews. I let him take the credit. I let him believe his own lie. And now, that lie was trying to destroy me. Marcus Sterling walked in, placing a thick folder on the glass desk. I have assembled a team. Forensic accountants from New York, divorce attorneys who make sharks look like goldfish, and a digital security unit. They are yours. Audrey, on one condition. I stopped typing and looked up, meeting his gaze. Name it. You help me acquire Novus Tech, Marcus said, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. I do not want to pay market price. I want to buy it when it is bleeding. I want to buy it for pennies on the dollar. You want a fire sale, I said, turning my chair to face him. I can give you that. I know where the bodies are buried because I dug the graves. But I have a condition of my own, which is I do not just want him bankrupt. I said, my voice dropping an octave, cold and steady. I want him destroyed. I want his reputation in tatters. I want him to look through the bars of a prison cell and realize that he put himself there. Deal. Marcus smiled, a genuine, terrifying expression. Deal. He grabbed the remote and turned on the massive television on the wall. The screen illuminated with a breaking news alert. The banner read, Novus Tech CEO Derek Vance announces new strategic vision. There he was, Derek, looking sharp in a bespoke suit I had picked out for him, holding hands with Brianna. She was beaming, looking at the cameras with the hunger of someone who had finally clawed her way to the main stage. We are ushering in a new era, Derek told the reporters, flashing that practiced smile. An era of youth, vitality, and transparency. Novus Tech is evolving. I almost laughed. Transparency. The scene cut to a live stream from Brianna's Instagram account. She was walking through my living room. My living room. "Hey guys," Brianna chirped, holding the phone up high, the camera shaking slightly. "Look at our new place. Derek is just the best. Look at this bag he surprised me with to celebrate the launch." She held up a limited edition crocodile skin handbag, practically shoving it into the camera lens. Then she twirled, showing off a diamond tennis bracelet that glittered under the chandelier I had installed last winter. "And these," he said, "I deserve to shine. We are literally living the dream." I did not cry. I did not scream. I zoomed in on the video feed on my laptop. I took a high-resolution screenshot of the bag. Then, the bracelet. I opened a separate window, the hidden ledger of Novus Tech's corporate expenses that I had mirrored to a private server 3 years ago. I searched for the recent withdrawals. There they were, listed under marketing expenses, overseas client relations, and R&D hardware acquisition. "He is not just cheating on me," I murmured, typing the serial numbers of the bag and the bracelet into a spreadsheet. "He is embezzling corporate funds to do it." "Careless," Marcus observed, watching over my shoulder. "Arrogant," I corrected. "He thinks he is untouchable because he thinks the person who checks the books is gone. He forgot that I never just checked the books. I wrote the system that generates them." I looked at the spreadsheet. It was starting to look less like a list of numbers and more like a roadmap to his ruin. "We are going to call this Operation Cold Rain," I said, closing the laptop with a snap. "He likes to spend money that isn't his. Let's see how he likes it when the IRS asks for the receipts." The glow of 3 monitors illuminated the dark room, casting long shadows against the walls of the penthouse. I felt less like a scorned wife and more like a forensic surgeon dissecting a cadaver. The body on the table was the financial structure of Novus Tech, and the cause of death was going to be Derek's ego. I accessed the system through the backdoor I had installed 4 years ago, a simple subroutine I had named Ghost that bypassed the admin logs. Derek had revoked my official credentials the second he kicked me out, but he never understood the architecture of the beast I built. He thought the keys were in his pocket, but I was the one who forged the lock. "Look at this," I said, pointing at the screen as Marcus walked in with 2 cups of coffee. He categorized the purchase of the waterfront villa as strategic marketing initiatives, $3.5 million of investor capital funneled through a shell company in the Cayman Islands, then wired directly to the real estate brokerage. "That is textbook embezzlement," Marcus noted, placing the coffee beside me. "Clumsy." "It gets worse," I replied, my fingers dancing over the keyboard. "He is paying Brianna's credit card bills from the consulting fees account. He is writing off her designer clothes, her spa days, and her first-class flights as business expenses. He is treating a publicly traded company like his personal piggy bank." I compiled the data into a neat encrypted package. It included the wire transfer receipts, the mismatched invoices, and a breakdown of the suspicious marketing costs that coincided perfectly with Brianna's Instagram posts. With a single keystroke, I sent the file to a secure anonymous tip line at the Internal Revenue Service. It was just a gentle nudge, a whisper in the ear of the taxman. Meanwhile, the pressure on Derek was mounting. Through my access to his personal calendar and emails, I saw the storm brewing. Brianna was not satisfied with just being the girlfriend. She was demanding a wedding, not just a ceremony, but a spectacle. She wanted a castle in Lake Como, a custom gown from Paris, and a guest list that included every influencer on the West Coast. "Babe, if we don't book the venue by Friday, we lose the date," she had texted him 14 times in 1 hour. "I need everyone to know I am the one." Derek was cash poor. His assets were tied up in stock that he could not sell without alerting the board. So, he made the fatal mistake I knew he would make. He raided the R&D budget. He pulled $200,000 from the critical server maintenance fund and another $300,000 from the prototype development grant. "He is gutting the company to buy her a tiara," I whispered, watching the funds drain in real time. "He is killing the product to feed the image." "Time to squeeze," Marcus said. We moved to the next phase. Marcus made a few quiet phone calls to his contacts at the major lending institutions. He did not make accusations. He simply shared a rumor about liquidity issues and potential regulatory probes at Novus Tech. Bankers are cowardly creatures. At the first scent of blood, they retreat. That evening, I watched the finale of our day's work unfold through the transaction logs of his American Express Centurion card. Derek was at the Gilded Lily, one of the most expensive steakhouses in the city. He was there with Brianna and 6 of her loudest friends. I could imagine the scene, the champagne flowing, the laughter. Brianna flashing her ring. The bill came to $4,200. I watched the transaction attempt hit the server. Status declined. Code 05, do not honor. He tried again. Status declined. I imagined the waiter returning to the table, leaning down to whisper the humiliating news. I imagined the silence falling over the table. I imagined Brianna's friends exchanging glances. My old phone, the one number Derek knew, was lying on the desk, powered off and disconnected, but I had routed the call logs to my computer. The screen lit up, incoming call Derek husband. It rang and rang and rang. He is panicking, I said, leaning back in my chair. He is trying to scream at me. He wants to blame me. He wants to ask why the bank accounts are frozen. Are you going to answer? Marcus asked. No, I said, deleting the notification. The subscriber he is trying to reach has moved on to a better service provider. I sat in the dim light of the penthouse, my face bathed in the blue glow of my tablet. To the world, I was Audrey Vance, the disgraced wife. But to Brianna, I was Lady Montecito, a faceless Instagram account with a private profile, a bio claiming old money heritage, and a feed full of curated luxury stock photos. I had spent 3 days grooming her, liking every post, commenting on her outfits, and sending vague, supportive DMs about the difficulties of dating powerful men. I typed the message that would light the fuse. Darling, I have been through 3 divorces with CEOs, I wrote, my fingers moving with surgical precision. They always say the cash is tied up in stocks. It is a lie. They hide it in offshore accounts before the wedding. If he really loves you, he will put the real estate in your name. That is the only safety net a woman has. Secure the asset, or you will end up with nothing. I hit send. 10 minutes later. The surveillance app on my laptop connected to the camera in my old living room alerted me to movement. Brianna was pacing the floor, her phone clutched in her hand. When Derek walked in, looking haggard and gray from the stress of the frozen accounts, she pounced. Derek, we need to talk about the house, Brianna said, her voice shrill. I want my name on the deed. Today. Derek threw his briefcase onto the sofa. Brianna, not now. I have the IRS breathing down my neck and the banks are freezing my lines of credit. I do not have time for paperwork. Oh, so you have time to hide money, but not time to secure our future, Brianna countered, reciting my script perfectly. It's, if you aren't hiding anything, transfer the title. Prove to me that I am not just a placeholder. I am not hiding anything, Derek shouted, his face flushing red. I am trying to keep this company afloat. The house stays in my name until the merger is complete. Then maybe there won't be a merger, she screamed back. I watched them fight in the home I had decorated, the home I had paid for. It was time to make the atmosphere match their mood. I opened the smart home control panel. The login credentials were saved in my browser, and Derek, in his technological incompetence, had never thought to change the admin password from the default I set up. I dragged the temperature slider for the master bedroom down to 55 degrees. Then, I set the lighting schedule for the hallway to strobe at random intervals. That night, at 2 a.m, I decided to wake them up. I triggered the fire alarm test mode. Through the camera, I saw the lights flash violently. The siren wailed. Derek and Brianna stumbled into the hallway, terrified. Make it stop! Make it stop! Brianna shrieked, covering her ears. Derek was frantically punching codes into the wall panel, but I had locked him out of the system. "It's not working. The system is glitching." "It's not a glitch," Brianna cried, her eyes wide with superstitious terror. "It's her. It feels like she is watching us. The house is freezing. Derek, it's an omen. She put a hex on this place." "Don't be stupid," Derek snapped, though I could see his hand trembling as he tried to rip the control panel off the wall. "Audrey is gone. This is just faulty wiring." "I can't live here," Brianna sobbed. "I can't sleep here. Sell it. We have to move to a hotel. Sell it and buy us a new place, one that isn't haunted by your crazy ex-wife." The psychological pressure worked. 2 days later, my phone buzzed. It was an alert from the county clerk's database, which I was monitoring. A title search had been initiated. Derek was trying to sell the mansion fast, likely to a cash buyer to get quick liquidity and appease Brianna. I leaned back and sipped my tea, waiting for the phone call I knew would happen. It did not come to me. It came to Derek. I listened in via the compromised microphone on his laptop, which sat open on the kitchen island. "Mr. Vance." The real estate attorney's voice came through the speakerphone, sounding apologetic but firm. "We have hit a snag with the listing." "What snag?" Derek barked. "It is my house. I have the deed." "Well, not exactly." The attorney replied, "I am looking at a trust amendment filed 5 years ago. It seems the property was placed into the Vance family trust for tax purposes. There is a clause here, Section 4B. It is quite specific." "What does it say?" Derek demanded, his voice tight. "It says that any transfer, sale, or leveraging of the property requires the notarized signature of the primary beneficiary." The lawyer explained. "I am the primary beneficiary," Derek yelled. "Actually, sir, no." The lawyer hesitated. "The primary beneficiary listed here is Mrs. Audrey Vance. Without her signature, this house is effectively frozen. You cannot sell it. You cannot even refinance it." I saw Derek's face drain of all color. He slumped against the marble counter. My marble counter. He was trapped in a cold, flashing, alarm-ringing prison of his own making, and the only person holding the key was the woman he had thrown out into the rain. "She knew," Derek whispered, staring at the wall where the thermostat was currently displaying a chilly 50 degrees. "She planned this years ago." "I didn't plan it for revenge, Derek," I said to the silent room, knowing he couldn't hear me. "I planned it because I knew you were stupid with money. But now it works just fine for revenge." The invitation to the Novus Tech Gala was printed on heavy cream-colored cardstock with gold leaf lettering. It promised an evening of innovation, disruption, and the unveiling of the OmniTrade a revolutionary tool that Derek claimed would make human stockbrokers obsolete. To the starving investors and the hungry press, it looked like the future. To me, it looked like a desperate man trying to sell an empty box. I sat in the secure conference room with Marcus, sliding a thin tablet across the polished mahogany table toward him. "The OmniTrade is a shell," I explained, my voice devoid of pity. "The user interface is beautiful because I designed it to be hypnotic. But the back end? It is dead." I stopped updating the predictive learning models 6 months ago when he started spending our server budget on Brianna's hotel suites. If anyone asks it to analyze a live market trend, it will just loop a random number generator based on data from 2010. Marcus picked up the tablet, a shark-like grin spreading across his face. "So, he is pitching a paperweight to venture capitalists for $50 million. He is pitching fraud," I corrected. "But that is not the only weapon we have." I opened a second file. This is his master's thesis from Stanford. I ran it through the latest academic plagiarism software. He copied 40% of it from a doctoral paper published in 1998 in a German economic journal. "He is not a genius. Marcus, he is a Xerox machine." Marcus laughed, a dry, sharp sound. "I will enjoy reading this during his keynote speech." We turned our attention to the monitor wall, where I had hacked into the auditorium's security feed. It was the dress rehearsal. Derek had insisted that Brianna host the event to appeal to a younger demographic. It was a disaster in motion. Brianna stood on the stage, wearing a gown that cost more than my first car, holding a microphone like it was a foreign object. So, like the algo rhythm thingy? Brianna stammered, giggling nervously as she looked at the teleprompter. It thinks for you. It's super smart. It's like having a brain inside your computer. Derek stormed onto the stage, his face purple with rage. Brianna, it is algorithm, and stick to the script. You are making us look like amateurs. Stop yelling at me, Brianna shrieked, her voice cracking. I am an influencer. Derek, I am trying to give this boring tech stuff some vibes. You are stressing me out. I need a matcha latte or I am going to faint. She stormed off stage, leaving Derek standing alone in the spotlight, rubbing his temples. He looked small. The titan of industry was just a tired, angry man babysitting a child he was sleeping with. While the circus played out on screen, my secure email inbox pinged. It was Sarah, the head of human resources at Novus Tech. She had been loyal to me for years, and she had finally had enough. Audrey. The message read, "He fired the lead engineer today for looking at him wrong. The team is breaking. I have the files you asked for. The NDA threats don't scare us anymore." Attached were 12 separate complaints: sexual harassment, hostile work environment, wrongful termination. Derek had not just neglected the company, he had poisoned it. He treated the staff like serfs in his little kingdom. Print them, I told the paralegal sitting in the corner. We are going to file a class action lawsuit for workplace toxicity and harassment. I want the process servers waiting at the backstage exit the moment the confetti cannons go off. I looked back at the screen. Derek was now practicing his speech to an empty room. He was gesturing wildly, talking about vision and legacy. They thought I was finished. Derek practiced, speaking to the empty seats. They thought Novus Tech was dependent on old ideas. But tonight, I prove that I am the only visionary this company needs. He truly believed it. He had convinced himself that my late nights, my code, and my strategy were all just administrative support for his genius. He was about to walk into a firing squad believing he was bulletproof. He has no idea, does he? Marcus asked quietly. None, I replied, closing the laptop. He thinks he is Steve Jobs. He is about to find out he is just Elizabeth Holmes without the turtleneck. The Seattle Convention Center was locked down like a fortress. Derek had hired a private security firm, stationing guards at every entrance and exit, armed with photos of my face. He had spent at least $50,000 of company money to ensure I could not step foot in the building. He was fighting a physical war, preparing for a dramatic confrontation that would never happen. I was sitting 5 miles away in a climate-controlled operations room, watching the high-definition security feed on a 60-inch monitor, sipping a cup of Earl Grey tea. He looks nervous, Marcus noted, pointing at the screen. Derek was sweating under the stage lights. He paced back and forth, holding a clicker in a hand that shook ever so slightly. Behind him, a massive LED wall displayed the Novus Tech logo, pulsating in a confident electric blue. Ladies and gentlemen, Derek's voice boomed through the speakers, slightly too loud. Today, we do not just predict the market, we control it. The OmniTrade AI is the result of 5 years of tireless innovation. It is flawless. It is unstoppable. It is time, I whispered. I did not have to type anything. I simply watched the clock on my laptop. I had embedded a dormant command in the presentation software months ago. A logic bomb set to detonate at exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon on launch day. On the screen, Derek clicked the remote to reveal the revenue projection chart. The screen did not show a chart. The blue logo fractured into static. A harsh, digital screech tore through the audio system, causing investors in the front row to cover their ears. Then, the screen turned a bright, alarming red. Lines of broken code cascaded down the wall, revealing the emptiness of the software. And then, overlaid on top of the code, came the screenshots. I had programmed it to cycle through his encrypted chats. The text was 10 feet tall, impossible to miss. The first message from Derek read, "Just pull another $100,000 from the research grant. I need to pay for the yacht deposit." Below it, Brianna's reply flashed in high definition. "But won't they notice the money is missing?" And then, the final nail in his coffin. Derek's response, "Audrey used to handle that. Now I just fake the invoices. Nobody looks at the details. We are rich, babe." A collective gasp sucked the air out of the auditorium. It was the sound of 300 investors realizing their money was gone. Flashbulbs erupted like a lightning storm. "Cut it!" Derek screamed, slamming the clicker against his thigh. He turned to the tech booth, his eyes wild. "Cut the feed. Turn it off. It is a glitch." But I had locked the system. The tech crew was helpless. The messages kept scrolling, detailing tax evasion, bribery, and his plans to fire the very employees who were standing backstage. Brianna, who was standing in the wings, panicked. She rushed onto the stage, her face a mask of terror. She grabbed Derek's arm, shaking him violently. She forgot or didn't care that the lapel microphone on her dress was still live. "You said you deleted it!" Brianna shrieked, her voice echoing through the horrified hall. "You swore to me you wiped the servers, you useless idiot! They are going to take everything!" "Shut up!" Derek roared, pushing her away. "The mic is on. Shut up!" It was too late. The illusion was shattered. Marcus stood up from his seat in the front row. He did not need a microphone. His presence alone commanded silence. He buttoned his suit jacket and looked Derek dead in the eye. "I have seen enough," Marcus declared, his voice cutting through the chaos like a knife. "Sterling Capital is officially withdrawing our offer, and I am calling for an immediate independent forensic audit of Novus Tech starting this afternoon." Derek stood frozen, bathed in the red light of his own incriminating texts. He looked out at the sea of angry faces, at the reporters typing furiously on their phones. I glanced at the stock ticker on my second monitor. Novus Tech. NVUS down 42%. Trading halted. "Gravity," I said softly to the screen. "It is a bitch." The collapse of Novus Tech was not a slow decline. It was a demolition. Less than 2 hours after Marcus stood up in the convention center, the glass doors of the company headquarters were breached. But it was not by angry investors. It was the FBI and the SEC, wearing navy blue windbreakers that signaled the end of Derek's career. I had provided them with a digital map of every server, every hidden folder, and every falsified ledger. They did not have to search. They just had to collect. Derek's financial world turned to ash instantly. The federal prosecutor obtained an emergency freeze order on all assets linked to his Social Security number. He could not buy a bottle of water, let alone a lawyer. Brianna found this out the hard way. I received a notification that the secondary black card was declined at a travel agency where she was attempting to book a one-way ticket to Cabo San Lucas. Realizing the money was gone, her survival instinct kicked in. She did not go to Derek to comfort him. She went to the mansion to loot it. I was waiting for her. I stood next to Detective Miller and 2 uniformed officers behind the hedge of the driveway, shielded from the rain that had started to fall again. We watched Brianna drag 3 massive suitcases out the front door. She was struggling under the weight, her heels clicking frantically on the wet stone. "Stop right there!" Detective Miller shouted, stepping into the light. Brianna dropped the bags, screaming, "I didn't do anything, I am just moving out. This is my stuff." I stepped out from behind the officers. "Actually, Brianna, that is not true." Her eyes widened when she saw me. I pointed to the smallest bag, a velvet duffel she had slung over her shoulder. "Open that one first." "You can't make me," she shrieked. "This is harassment." The officer unzipped the bag. Inside, nestled among silk scarves, was an antique jewelry box, my grandmother's emerald set. It was worth $200,000, and I had left it in the wall safe, the safe that Brianna had clearly pried open. "Grand larceny," I said calmly. "Possession of stolen property. That is a felony. Brianna, you are looking at 5 to 10 years in prison." Brianna's face crumbled. The arrogant influencer vanished, replaced by a terrified child. She looked at the handcuffs on the officer's belt and then at me. I can help you," she stammered, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. "It wasn't me, it was Derek. He made me take it. I know where he keeps the real stuff. The black drives, he hid them in the wine cellar behind the vintage rack. They have everything, please. I don't want to go to jail." "Get her statement," Detective Miller said, gesturing for his partner to handcuff her. "And check the wine cellar." As they were shoving a weeping Brianna into the back of a squad car, a taxi pulled up to the curb. Derek stumbled out. He looked like a ghost. His tie was undone. His suit was soaked with sweat, and his eyes were wild. He saw the flashing blue lights reflecting off the wet pavement. He saw the police carrying boxes of evidence out of his house. He saw his mistress in the back of a cruiser. And then he saw me, standing under a large umbrella, dry and untouched. He froze. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. He had no company. He had no home. He had no money. He had no one. My phone rang in my hand. It was him, standing just 30 feet away, too cowardly to walk up to me. I answered, putting the phone to my ear while looking him dead in the eye. "Audrey." His voice was a broken rasp, trembling so hard I could barely understand him. "Audrey, please. You have to stop this. I don't know what happened. That girl, she bewitched me. I wasn't myself." I watched him drop to his knees on the wet asphalt, the rain soaking his expensive pants. "I still love you," he sobbed into the phone, his voice cracking. "I never stopped loving you. It was all a mistake. Please, baby, help me." "The only mistake," I said, my voice clear and cold, "was thinking I wouldn't check the receipts." I hung up and turned my back on him as the officers moved in to read him his rights. The fluorescent lights of the detention center visitation room hummed with a sickly, electric buzz, a stark contrast to the soft, warm lighting of the penthouse I had woken up in. I sat on the metal chair, smoothing the fabric of my white tailored suit. I had chosen white intentionally. It was the color of mourning in some cultures, and today I was mourning the death of the man I thought I knew. When the guard escorted Derek in, the transformation was pathetic. The man who had thrown me out into the rain just 48 hours ago was gone. In his place sat a hunched figure in a wrinkled gray suit that smelled of stale sweat and fear. His hair was matted, his eyes bloodshot. He sat down, and for a moment he tried to summon that old, charming smile, but it faltered into a grimace. "Audrey," he breathed, leaning forward, his hands trembling on the steel table. "Thank God you came. This is a nightmare. I need you to talk to the judge. Tell them about my anxiety. Tell them about the stress I have been under." I stared at him, my face a mask of porcelain calm. I did not speak. I just waited. "You know how hard I work," Derek continued, his voice gaining a desperate, wheedling edge. The pressure to keep Novus on top. It broke me. "Audrey, that girl, Brianna, she was just a distraction, a drug. I never loved her. I was sick. I wasn't thinking straight. You can't let them destroy me for a moment of weakness." He was doing it again, rewriting reality, making himself the victim. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a single document. I slid it across the table. "Do you recognize this?" I asked softly. Derek squinted at the paper. "It looks like our prenup." "Look at the addendum," I said. "Page 4. You signed it 2 years ago in Cabo San Lucas. We were celebrating your first cover on Wired magazine. You were drunk on tequila and arrogance. You told me you were untouchable. You said you would sign anything because you would never get caught failing." Derek's eyes scanned the page, and his jaw dropped. "It is a fidelity clause," I explained, my tone conversational. "It states that in the event of proven infidelity, all marital assets, including your shares in Novus Tech, transfer immediately to the injured party. And thanks to Brianna's Instagram and your own text messages, the proof is irrefutable." You tricked me," he stammered, his face paling. I protected myself. I corrected, "But that is not the worst part." "Derek, the worst part is that you think the company is worth fighting for." I leaned in closer, my voice dropping to a whisper. "Novus Tech is empty," I said. "The algorithms, the predictive engines, the code that made you rich. I wrote all of it before we were married. It was my intellectual property. And this morning, at 9 o'clock, I sold the exclusive rights to that code to Marcus Sterling for $150 million. Derek looked like he had been shot in the chest. He gasped for air, clutching the edge of the table. You sold my company," he choked out. "My company." I corrected him again. "You were just the mascot. Marcus owns the engine now. Novus Tech is just a brand name attached to a hollow shell. The stock is trading at 40 cents a share. It will be delisted by Friday." "No," Derek moaned, putting his head in his hands. "No." I took out personal loans. I leveraged my shares to pay for the expansion, to pay for the villa. "I know," I said, standing up. "The bank's called. Since the collateral for those loans, your stock is now worthless. They are calling in the debt. You don't just have nothing. Derek, you owe $12 million. You will be in debt for the rest of your life." I picked up my purse. "Oh, and my lawyer is filing a separate suit for defamation regarding your threats to have me committed. We will take whatever future wages you manage to earn once you get out of prison." Derek looked up. The pleading in his eyes vanished, replaced by a pure, ugly hatred. His lip curled back, revealing his teeth. You bitch," he hissed, spit flying from his mouth. "I made you. You were nothing. I will kill you." The guard stepped forward, hand on his baton. I didn't flinch. I just smiled. A small, sad smile for the wasted years. "Goodbye, Derek," I said, turning my back on him. I walked toward the heavy steel door. Behind me, I heard him screaming my name, the sound echoing off the concrete walls, growing fainter and fainter until the heavy door clanged shut, sealing him in the silence he deserved. The divorce decree arrived via courier just 2 weeks later. It was anticlimactic. Derek could not afford the retainer for a high-powered firm anymore, so he was left with a strip mall attorney who advised him to capitulate on every single point. He signed the papers without reading them, a broken man signing away a life he had already forfeited. I got the house, the cars, and, most importantly, full custody of my own identity. I walked through the empty halls of the mansion one last time. The air still felt heavy with the ghosts of arguments and silent dinners. I did not feel triumphant standing there. I just felt tired. I called the real estate agent from the driveway, not even bothering to lock the front door behind me. "Sell it," I told her into the phone. "I do not care about the price. Just get it off my hands. I want it gone by the end of the month. I do not want a single brick of this place attached to my name." With the capital from the house sale and the substantial payout from the intellectual property transfer, I did not go on a vacation. I went to work. I established the Vance Initiative, a venture capital fund dedicated exclusively to female-led tech startups. I wanted to ensure that no other woman would ever have to stand in the shadows while a man took credit for her genius. I was building the safety net I wish I had possessed 10 years ago. As for Brianna, her fall was as public as her rise. The judge was not impressed by her tears or her follower count. She was sentenced to 500 hours of community service for the theft. The internet, fickle and cruel as always, turned on her instantly. The comments section on her profiles became a firing squad, forcing her to delete every account she owned. The last I heard, she had moved back to her parents' house in rural Ohio and was working the checkout counter at a local grocery store. The influencer lifestyle was over, replaced by the reality of scanning coupons. Novus Tech was absorbed into Sterling Capital, stripped for parts and rebranded. Marcus walked into my temporary office a week after the acquisition was finalized. "I do not want you writing code anymore, Audrey," Marcus said, placing a heavy contract on my desk. "I have enough coders. I need a general. I want you as the chief strategy officer for the entire group. You see things other people miss." I signed the contract. My first purchase with my new salary was a penthouse in downtown Seattle. It was nothing like the old mansion. It was sleek, modern, and comprised almost entirely of glass. It overlooked the Puget Sound. I could stand by the window and watch the rainstorms roll in from the Pacific, safe and warm on the 42nd floor, knowing the water could never touch me again. One evening, as I was leaving the lobby for a gala, I saw the familiar black SUV waiting at the curb. I expected to see the usual driver, a stoic man named Frank. Instead, a younger man stepped out. He had dark hair and kind eyes that seemed strangely familiar. "Ms. Vance," he said, opening the door for me. "My father sent me to pick you up for the board dinner, but I volunteered." "Your father?" I asked, pausing with my hand on the door frame. "Marcus," he replied with a smile that reached his eyes. "I am Julian Sterling." I looked at him, surprised. "You were driving the car that night. The night in the rain." "I was," Julian admitted, looking a bit sheepish as he adjusted his cuff. "I am actually an architect. I designed this building, in fact. But when my father told me about you, about what you were doing, I wanted to meet the woman who was smart enough to outplay him. I have admired your work on predictive algorithms for years." We did not go to the board dinner immediately. We stood on the sidewalk for 20 minutes, talking about architecture, code, and the structural integrity of glass in a storm. There was no arrogance in his voice, no attempt to explain things to me. He listened. He respected the space I took up in the world. "Would you like to get coffee sometime?" Julian asked, not as a driver to a passenger, but as a man to a woman. "Not to talk about business, just coffee." "I would like that," I said, realizing for the first time in years that my heart was beating not from stress, but from anticipation. "Then I will drive carefully," he joked. I got into the car, not as a victim, and not as a vengeful ex-wife. I was just Audrey. And for the first time, the road ahead looked perfectly clear. It had been exactly 365 days since I stood shivering in a driveway, watching my life crumble behind a locked door. Tonight, I stood on a stage at the Four Seasons Hotel, the blinding spotlight feeling less like an interrogation lamp and more like the sun. The room was filled with 500 of the most powerful people in Seattle. I held the heavy crystal trophy in my hand, the engraving catching the light. "Audrey Vance, Entrepreneur of the Year." I leaned into the microphone, my voice steady and amplified across the silent ballroom. "Success is not about never falling," I said, scanning the crowd. "It is about realizing that the ground you land on can be the foundation for something much taller than what you lost." The applause erupted again. As the room rose to a standing ovation, my eyes drifted from the front row, where Marcus and Julian sat beaming, to the shadows near the service entrance. There was a man standing there, holding a silver tray laden with empty champagne flutes. He was wearing a generic black vest that was slightly too large for his frame. His shoulders were slumped, and his hair, once styled to perfection, was thinning and gray. He looked 10 years older than 39. It was Derek. He wasn't looking at the floor. He was looking at me. His eyes were wide, filled with a mixture of awe and devastating regret. He looked at the trophy in my hand, then at the designer gown I wore, and finally at the piece on my face. In that moment, I saw the realization hit him. He had thrown away a diamond because he was too weak to hold it, only to pick up a pebble that dragged him to the bottom of the ocean. He took a step forward, his lips moving silently. I could read the word he was trying to form. Audrey. He wanted acknowledgement. He wanted me to glare at him. He wanted me to laugh at him. He wanted me to scream. He wanted any proof that he still mattered to me, even if it was just as an object of hatred. I looked right at him, and I gave him the most painful punishment possible. I looked through him. My gaze slid over his face as if he were nothing more than part of the wallpaper, a piece of furniture, a ghost that had already faded. I did not frown. I did not smile. I felt absolutely nothing. The fire of hatred that had fueled me for months had burned out, leaving behind a clean, empty space where he used to exist. I turned my back on him and walked off the stage. The gala ended an hour later. I walked toward the exit, the heavy glass doors swinging open to reveal the night. The sound was unmistakable. It was raining, a torrential Seattle downpour, just like that night. But this time, I did not freeze. Before a single drop could touch my skin, a large black umbrella opened above me. I looked up to see Julian holding it, his arm strong and steady. He did not look annoyed by the weather. He just looked at me with a warmth that melted the lingering chill of the past. "The car is warm," Julian said softly. "Shall we?" "We shall," I replied, taking his arm. As we walked toward the waiting car, I glanced toward the valet stand. Derek was standing there, huddled under the awning, waiting for a bus or a rideshare that probably wouldn't come for 20 minutes. He was shivering. His cheap uniform was soaked from dashing out to serve guests. He looked small. He looked cold. He looked alone. I paused for a second, listening to the rhythm of the rain hitting the pavement. It used to sound like shattered glass. Now, it just sounded like water washing the streets clean. I climbed into the leather seat of my own car, dry and safe. As Julian closed the door, shutting out the storm, I realized something profound. I had not just survived the hurricane that Derek tried to drown me in. I had become the storm, and I had washed away everything that was not strong enough to stand beside me. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Please comment down below where you are listening from. I would love to read your thoughts and connect with you all. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and hit the hype button so this story can be heard by more people.